In 1-5, finally time to put some algebra with our geometry. So here we go, write down these directions for yourself. So for all of these examples, you are going to write an equation, and show all work. To find x in each figure. Okay, so here we go. For number 1, let's say I put 2x minus 8 here. Understand that that is labeling that angle. And because of the box, you should be understanding also by now that that means that angle is exactly 90 degrees. So the equation that we're going to be coming up with is we're going to say the variable, that expression, that 2x minus 8, is the same as the degree measure of 90 degrees. So that's the equation that you're writing. You're going to say 2x minus 8 equals 90, and then show me all of the steps for solving that equation. Hence that review that we've been doing in the algebra for previous worksheets. So here, if we now add 8 to both sides, that would cancel, leaving you with 2x equals 98. At that point, if you want to get rid of 2 times something, then the opposite operation is to go ahead and divide by 2 on both sides. Those 2's now cancel, and you're left with x equals 49. Okay, and then we need to start talking about if your answer should be just 49 or if it would be 49 degrees. Since x does not stand alone in the picture up here, it's going to just be x is 49. But if you were to pick up the 49, for instance, and plug in 49 up here and say 2 times 49 and then minus 8, that answer would be a degree measure. And that degree measure would be 90 degrees. Okay. All right, for number 2 then, in this one, let's give you this part is 4x and this part is 5x. Okay, so we're just talking about those 2 parts of that whole angle. And hopefully you're envisioning that this part, that's the 4x, and this part, the 5x, both of those together, and I don't want to make them the same marking. I'm not trying to say they're equal. I'm just trying to show you what's happening. I'm trying to say that those 2 angles together would make up this entire right angle that you've got. Okay, so what that means then, as an equation, without putting those markings in there, is that you're telling me 4x plus 5x, both of those angles added together, would equal exactly 90. So there's the equation that you have to write for me. Okay, and then combining like terms, you would have 9x equals 90. The opposite operation from multiplication is division, so divide by 9. The 9's would cancel on the left, leaving you with x, and you would get x equals 10. At this point, again, you're deciding, is x 10 or 10 degrees? Okay, since x does not stand alone making up an entire angle up here, then x is just going to be a regular 10. Okay, I'll try to explain that again. This is a regular 10. If you were to go up in the picture and plug in 10 here, like 4 times 10, you would tell me this equals 40 degrees. So the angle's 40 degrees. If I said 5 times 10, then this angle would be 50 degrees. Okay, but the true answer that we're looking for here is just a regular x equals 10. Okay, all right, next problem for this one. Let's give you 3x minus 9 here, 2x plus 4 here, and I'll try to label for you what's happening. So we're trying to tell you 3x minus 9 is this angle, and 2x minus 4 is this angle. Okay, that I'll erase in a minute. So I hope you're seeing that the two of them together, if you were to go through both of them, okay, make up a straight angle. And a straight angle, we know, adds up to 180. Okay, so the equation then that we're trying to come up with is we are trying to say then, we know that 3x plus 9, nope, sorry, 3x minus 9 plus 2x plus 4, those two angles add up to 180. All right, now we're ready to combine like terms on the left. So 3x's plus 2x's is 5x. Negative 9 plus 4 is negative 5 equals 180. And now that you've got all the terms, like terms combined on each side, you're ready to move things around. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides to get this to cancel. So 5x will equal 185. To get this to go away, you're going to divide by 5. And therefore, x will equal 37. Okay, so then the question is this a regular 37 or is this 37 degrees? And hopefully you're seeing now that this would be a regular 37 degrees. It would be if you picked up x and plugged it into one of these, that those angles would be the degrees. Okay, all right, a little bit differently on number 4. Let's give you some letters for communication. So let's just put D here, which would be really like there's a point D sitting out here. H here, B. Okay, you can even put in those points if that's going to make you feel more comfortable. A is here, which remember A there means there's just a point here. And then let's give you an X in this spot. And let's tell you angle DAB equals 88 degrees. And tell you that ray AH bisects angle DAB. All right, so if you're on a homework and you think there's nothing written, look around the problem a little bit. It's either above it, below it, beside it. There's probably some information being given to you. I will tell you that I also want you to get into the habit of marking your equal parts. Okay, that's mark equal parts. That's a big part and actually a big help once you get used to it. So I'm going to go with the information that's given to you, and we know we have to come up with some sort of equation. So again, you might be able to logically tell me the answer right now, but you got to have some sort of work. Okay, and we asked for an equation that we might be grading on the quiz. So here we go. I'm going to say, I know that if AH, this part right here, if AH is cutting through the middle of angle DAB, so if this is cutting through the middle of this whole angle DAB, then the marking part of this, the marking part of equal parts, would be that this part equals that part. Okay, you should be ready from that from the last section. Well, if those two are equal, then if this is called X on the left, can't I also call this X on the right? If they're equal, call them the same thing. Well, then I'm ready to write an equation. That equation is going to be, if I take X and add another X, right? This whole thing, if I take X and I add another X, I'm going to get the whole angle that was given to me, which is 88. All right, so solving then, that is 2x equals 88. So if I divide both sides by 2 then, that means x would equal 44. Same question as before, is x 44 or 44 degrees? Well, I hope if you're going up and looking at the picture, you would agree that x is making up the entire angle. You're not just having to plug it in, and therefore x would equal 44 degrees. Again, because each of those would be 44 degrees. They are angles themselves. That's what's happening there. All right, now before we go on, we need some practice probably with canceling fractions. Okay, so fractions, you need to become very efficient at these in this class. You're in upper level math, so we do not just skip problems because they have fractions in them. Instead, we get rid of fractions, right? Most people don't love the fractions, so what do? We don't skip the problem. Instead, we just get rid of the fractions. So for clearing fractions, guys, it's really just a process. And if you do this correctly, after your first step, you should have no fractions. Okay, so that's kind of your tip off if you're doing it correctly or not. So here's how we start. I'm going to start by saying I'm going to make all of the terms in this problem, which there are 4 of them. Okay, here's a term. Terms are split by plus and minus signs. There's a term, there's a term, and there's a term. Okay, so we have 4 terms in this problem. I'm going to erase this. Okay, so it's going to get complicated quickly. I want to make it as easy as possible. And I'm going to make every term into a fraction. So the only number I can put 7 over without changing it is 7 over 1, because 7 divided by 1 is 7. Likewise, I'm going to put 2x over 1 and negative 2 over 1. And our front fraction, the 1/2 in front of the x, is already a fraction. So now I'm looking at the denominators and getting a common denominator. Common denominator between 2, 1, 1, and 1 is 2. That means I am going to think that I'm going to multiply each of these terms by 2. And just so that there's a little more room, most of the time I would just write it up there, okay, but it's going to get complicated quickly, guys. Maybe I'll write it in front of each one for you for a moment. Okay, so 2 over 1 times the original, I'll keep switching back and forth, 1/2 times x plus 2 over 1 times 7 over 1 equals 2 over 1 times 2x over 1 minus 2 over 1 times 2 over 1. Okay, that's just visually. Now you see why I probably want to try to be able to do this as a shortcut very soon, because that's a lot of writing, okay? When you get more comfortable, I promise you won't have to do all of that writing. So here we go. You know when we multiply fractions, we multiply straight across. But for reducing, you reduce anything on the top with anything on the bottom. So I am noticing here that 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into that 2 once. So if I multiply straight across, I'm really looking at 1 times x, which gives you x, over 1 times 1. Okay, we're talking about those 2 ones. And that's just 1. Next term, 2 over 1 times 7 over 1 would give you 14 over 1. I don't need to write the over 1. Next, 2 over 1 times 2x over 1 would be 4x over 1. So I'm not going to put the 1. And lastly, negative 2 times 2 is just going to give you negative 4 over 1. So notice, very first step, if you do it correctly, okay, you should have no fractions. If you still have a fraction, you didn't do the process correctly. The whole goal was to clear the fractions. And now it should be your normal steps, right? So we want to move things around. I'm purposely on you going to say maybe you're more comfortable with moving the x to the left. So I'm going to have to deal with some negatives. All right, that's okay. If I subtract 4x from both sides, these are gone. You now have x minus 4x is negative 3x plus 14 equals negative 4. Now that you've taken care of the x's, deal with the 14. So subtract 14 from both sides. These will cancel. Now negative 3x equals negative 18. And then the opposite of multiply is divide. So I'm going to divide by negative 3 in front of the x. The negative 3's will cancel, so x equals negative divided by negative is positive, and 18 divided by 3 is 6. Again, is x 6 or 6 degrees? We're kind of in that mode. Remember, this isn't a geometric picture. This is just algebra, so it's always going to be just a regular 6 for an algebra problem. Okay. Maybe you go back and try this one yourself, okay, without me guiding you through it, and see if you can get it. All right, so for the next one then, let's do that same thing. I'm going to start by making all the terms, there are 4 of them, into fractions. So those 2 over 1. I'm now trying to get a common denominator between 4, 1, 2, and 1. Okay, and your common denominator is always going to be the biggest number that all of them divide into, and that would be 4. Okay, so I'm going to be thinking about putting a 4 over 1 in front or back of each of those and just multiplying each of them by 4 over 1. So again, I probably for this time would actually say that you probably should write it out this way. Okay, but for ease, eventually, I know that you're probably going to want to do this. Maybe you're just putting 4 over 1 here, 4 over 1 here. Try not to forget the negative. Maybe 4 over 1 here, and I'll put 4 over 1 at the back. Okay, now you see why I say it gets complicated when there's not a lot of room. But you're still doing the same thing. So instance, 4 goes into 4 once, 4 goes into 4 once, and if you multiply 1 over 1 by 3x over 1, you get 3x. Here, don't forget you had a negative 5 times the 4. So negative 5 times 4 is going to give you negative 20 equals. Here I'm reducing again. 2 goes into 2 once. 2 goes into 4 twice. So 2 over 1 times 1 over 1 times x will just be 2x. And the last one, negative 1 over 1 times 4 over 1 is negative 4. Okay. So leave yourself enough room when you're doing the problems, guys. I think until you are very good at it, you probably want to do it like we did in problem 1. Write a little more. And then we've combined like terms on both sides, so we're set and ready. I'm going to move the x's to the left, which means I'm going to subtract 2x on both sides. So I'm now sitting at 1x left minus 20 equals negative 4 on the right-hand side. And then if I add 20 to both sides, that's gone. So x equals 16. Again, this is just an algebraic problem, so x is just a regular 16. Okay. And then if you can go ahead and somewhere in your notes where you have room, go ahead and draw this number 5 picture for us to just go back and practice making up more equations now that we've practiced with the fractions. Okay, so stop the video, draw the picture for yourself, make sure that you include the x, the y, the 60 degrees, and also the box that you see in the picture, because that's all important. Now let's say I was going to give you a more complicated picture like this and ask you to come up with an equation, and you just need an equation for x and an equation for y separately. Okay, so try it for yourself, but then come back and see what we've got. All right, so I hope what you see, first of all, is that if you were to not pick up your pencil, guys, this is really the key. If you don't pick up your pencil and you put your pencil down and you draw through a half circle, okay, half circle, by that I mean this, I'm going to make it pretty large. If you just draw a half circle, which that is, anything that half circle goes through, if you put them all together, makes up a straight angle, right? Because you've seen that arc being a straight angle. That means we are saying that x combined with the 90-degree angle that that's going through in this section. So here's the x, here's the middle section, and the 60. So x plus 90 degrees plus 60 degrees equals 180 degrees. Now, honestly, when I'm writing the equation, guys, I know that those are degrees, but I deal with them at the end. So when I'm writing the equation, I don't actually write the degrees in there. So I don't want that to bug you that those are not in my notes. Okay. Combine like terms now, I'm ready to solve for x. I am ready to say that I know that x plus 150 equals 180. and get rid of the 150 by subtracting it. Okay, and that's gone, so therefore x equals 30. And back to our good rules of checking to see what it should be, 30 or 30 degrees. Since I see that x does stand by itself up here, I know that that angle would be 30 degrees. So answers for x should be 30 degrees. I'll box that. It also helps that you always put it in the picture, okay? Not just for fun, but also for us to be able to visually help us with the rest of the stuff. Okay, and take out some of these other things so that maybe they're not so distracting. Okay, with the rest of what we're about to do. Okay, so now I need to come up with a different equation for y and show that work. Okay. And I'll give you a hint, guys. Really, the only thing you should see in this picture, I see a right angle, which might be able to use for something, and I see straight angles. Those are really the only two things happening in the picture because they didn't give us any other information. So I hope maybe you're going to see this one. Again, without picking up my pen or pencil, I'm going all the way through those two angles, which means that makes a straight angle. Okay, it's a half circle. So I am saying this angle and this angle make up 180. That would be y plus 60 degrees. Remember, I'm not going to write the degrees though, equals 180. If I now subtract 60 from both sides to solve, this is gone, and I will get y equals 120 degrees. And again, why is it degrees? Because this y right here is an angle. So that does make up 120 degrees.